Hello, everybody. I hope the weather is better where you are than it is where it is here. I'm Sharon Walpole. I'm Career Map. Here to celebrate today National Intern Week. And this week we have a live webinar with Network Rail. We'll be starting with them in just a minute. But before we do, I thought we'd go through a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't noticed, on the right of your screen, you have the option for your chat. Feel free to put any questions that you have during the presentation. After the presentation, there'll be a Q&A. So I'll be curating the questions and putting them forward to our speakers for you to get your question. You might find during the presentation some others pop into your head. Feel free to put those in too. This session is being recorded. So if you want to get more information or listen to it again or share it with your friends, I'll just pop that in the chat now. There's a link. Or if you're watching this on demand, go to YouTube and search for Career Map TV, one word. I think that's everything we have for now. So if I can have lovely speakers, Anthony and Karim, to join us. Hi. I'll leave you two in control. I will be in the background watching carefully, and I'll see you all at the Q&A afterwards.
Perfect. Thank you, Sharon. Hi, guys. So my name's Cameron. I work alongside Anthony. So I work in the talent acquisition side of things at Network Rail. So today we're just giving a brief introduction into what our placement year can take you and what it's like working at Network Rail.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anthony Joseph. I'm a finance graduate at Network Rail, having recently graduated from economics at the University of Warwick.
Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. So just a bit of a brief introduction of what we're going to do for you guys today. So we split the presentation up into 4 different sections. The first section is just give you an introduction in terms of the different schemes and what we offer at Network Rail. Then after that, we'll have myself and Anthony. So I've prepared a few questions for Anthony. So I'll be asking him what his experience has been like in Network Rail for the time and duration he's been here. Then I'll pass over to Anthony. He'll run through some application tips. So he's been through the process live and direct in the last 2 years. So he'll be fresh out of the pot. So he'll be able to advise you guys what's the best way to apply. And then we'll leave some time at the end for you guys to ask myself and Anthony any questions that you may have. We've prepared a few questions in terms of icebreakers just to settle you guys in. So Sharon will start the icebreaker activity. We've got 3 questions for you guys. You should see in the bottom of your screen a poll that's started. If you have any problems, just pop
Hi,
it.
Cameron. We've got just one at a time live, so we'll get some answers on this one and then come back and do the next one in a second.
Perfect. So the first question is, which of these perks is not part of Network Rail employee experience? So what do you guys think is something that you wouldn't receive as part of your package when you join Network Rail?
If you're having trouble finding the poll, if you see on the right where you see the chat function, you'll see another button next to it. That is an opportunity for you to answer the poll.
Hey, Cameron.
Hi.
I can take this one over if you like. Hi, Sophia.
Okay, I see we've got some answers here. What do you think you found? Can you hear me, Cameron?
I can hear you. Sorry, there's just a bit of delayed response there, Sharon.
Oh, okay.
I managed to receive that now. So we can see that 25% of you guys believe that you receive 5 volunteer days to support your favorite causes, so you can save the world one day at a time. Interesting. Another 25% believe that you have access to our employee assistance program because of mental health as well. 0% of you guys have selected that you get 75% of discount on your rail travel. A further 20% of you guys have selected that the discounted online shopping is a part of the package that you receive. And then we've got a couple of zeros, so none of you guys think that we receive any healthcare benefits or access to any pensions or insurance schemes. And then the last one, we've got a resounding 33% as a viral TikTok of Francis Guanos will do your introduction. What do you guys think is the correct answer? Any thoughts? Or should we get the answer revealed to you guys?
I think they may be being shy.
No need to be shy. We've got no takers. Sharon, do you want to reveal the answer?
I wasn't given privies to the answers here, so I'm afraid you're going to have to give the answers.
That's okay. So it's the last one. So 33% of you did get it correct. So the viral TikTok of Francis is not part of the package that you receive at Network Rail. So congratulations to all you guys that did answer correctly.
Should we do the next?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Here we go. It may take a second or two for it to come through, but if you look again, like I said, on the right panel underneath chat, you have polls. Interesting questions. I wonder if I would have thought you've done all of those.
Very interesting. I think there's an even split, so I can see 50% of you guys have gone for 20 of the UK's largest stations, and then 50% of you guys have selected 300 trains in the UK. Give it a few more minutes before I can get everyone to answer, but interesting to see you guys have picked up on something.
And whilst we wait for people to answer this one, I thought on the last poll there was something about volunteering days, and there really is a big push at Network Rail to try and use those up. For example, this year, having just started, I've been able to do 3 different things. One of those, which was particularly nice, was we went to a dog rescue home for abandoned dogs who weren't really able to get walks regularly because there just weren't enough staff. And it really felt like giving back because otherwise they were stuck in their pens all day.
That sounds absolutely lovely. I think it's a great opportunity that it's being supported and promoted by Network Rail. I think it's things that many people don't think about as being an actual benefit, but it's almost like a mental health day as well, isn't it?
Not only that, it's a great way to get to know your team a little bit better, find out what they like to do in their spare time. Because, for example, one volunteering day which I helped organise was to a pig sanctuary, just for a bit of fun, which was local to Milton Keynes. And yeah, just a nice way to unwind and get to know colleagues a little bit better.
Sounds great. So what do you think? Are these answers correct or not? I want to know.
Perfect. So we'll run through the answers. So none of you guys, so 0% of you guys have selected the 20,000 miles on track. 14% of you guys have run through 30,000 bridges, tunnels, and viaducts. 0% of you guys have selected 1,000 signals and level crossing. 28%, interestingly, have selected 20 of the UK's largest stations. And this time, quite a resounding 57% of you guys have selected 300 trains in the UK. So in fact, the correct answer is the 57% of what you guys have selected. 300 trains in the UK. That is something that we don't manage. We do get quite a lot of grief for it at Network Rail, but we do not manage the trains exactly as that.
I have to say I'm surprised about the signalling.
I am too, Sharon. We do manage that.
Right. So which one of these you do manage? This is saying what you do not. So you do manage.
So all of those we manage apart from the trains itself. We don't manage the trains itself. All the other
Right.
correct itself.
Great. So mostly they've got it right.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we go on to the next question then?
Perfect. Guess the fake placement role. So this will be interesting to see if any of you guys visited our website beforehand, before this presentation. You guys might get that answer correct.
It's a test of why it's so important to do some research. What do you think? I think, again, they're being shy.
I think so too. We'll give them a few minutes.
Should we go on to the next slide? I'll leave it live, and then at the end of the next slide, come back and see if more people have answered.
Perfect. We can do that. So we've prepared a short video for you guys just to see. Obviously, if you guys don't know who Network Rail is itself, we've got a short clip for about 2 minutes that will play just to run through things of who we are and what we do.
Perfect. And after that, we can come back to the poll. So hold on.
Perfect. I hope you guys enjoyed that short presentation in terms of the video that gives you better understanding of who we are and what we do. We'll refer back to the poll in terms of the last question that was asked, and then we'll scoot along in terms of the presentation. So in terms of guessing the fake placement role, 0% of you selected civil engineering, 14% of you guys selected electrical engineering, another 14% of you selected mechanical engineering, and quite a large proportion of you at 71% selected IT and business services. Do you guys have any thoughts on what the correct answer was? Would you guys let me just reveal it? You guys stay quite shy.
Yeah, maybe you should give them the answers.
So it's kind of a trick question in that sense. We cover all those placements, those that were mentioned in the poll. So we cover a lot of engineering here at Network Rail, but in terms of other business functions, on the next slide that I'm going to present to you guys, you'll have an understanding of what we do outside of engineering. But the correct answer was we cover all of those, so there was no fake placement role involved in that. Perfect. So this leads me accordingly on to our next slide, which is probably what you guys are interested in today. So as you can see on slides, that we cover engineering as our bread and butter at Network Rail, but everyone assumes that's just all we do. Beyond the tracks, we have business function roles that keep us together and hand in hand with our engineers that make up Network Rail. 60% of our roles, I would say, are engineering focused, and the remaining 40% are beyond our tracks. So that's our business function roles. As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, the salary that we offer for our placement students is £17,000 a year, and that's prorated. So this year, our applications open next week. So hopefully on the 2nd of October, next week, Wednesday, we're looking to open our applications for our internships. Normally, the period of applications runs from October till about mid-December. So sometimes when the population allocation is proven to be popular, we shut that role early ahead of time. So sometimes that might close before the December deadline. So do keep your eyes out. So if you're interested in a role, I would encourage you guys to apply as soon as possible. This year, we're looking to recruit 50 students in our undergraduate industry placements, and we're looking at recruiting 30 summer placement roles. So in terms of the roles itself, in a nutshell, I'll run you through what each role entails. So chemical engineering you're looking to discover solutions for our structures. You'll work alongside banks, and you ensure the maintenance and requirements are met with using sustainable methods. So sustainability is quite a big thing here at Network Rail if we're looking for a greener future. So we have targets that are set for 2020, 2045 and 2050 in both England and Scotland, looking at greener railways. In terms of electrical engineering, many of you guys might not know that Network Rail is one of the largest landowners registered in the UK. That also goes hand in hand with Network Rail being one of the largest electricity users in the UK. So electrical engineers, what you'll be doing in that sort of scheme is you're looking for more green and renewable energy sources to help reduce our carbon footprint, while also helping ensure train journeys are kept on time and manageable. In terms of our mechanical engineering scheme, our engineers traditionally physically work on the railway to ensure that tracks and infrastructure is applicable and can be used on a day-to-day basis without any issues. Now, in terms of beyond the tracks, we do have schemes that run outside of the railway. So in terms of project management, you'd be working alongside senior business figures in order to invest in the generation of better railways while headlining safety at the top of the agenda. So again, safety is a massive thing at Network Rail. So that's key. I would like to make sure you guys understood that part. So safety is a massive part in terms of your application in your day-to-day role, whether you're in office or in track. Safety is a big element of Network Rail. In terms of the commercial side of things, this department is responsible for purchasing goods and services for Network Rail. So generally, what you'll be doing day-to-day is drafting and awarding contracts to our suppliers and working on associated projects, ensuring that the terms and conditions are well met. You'll be doing budgeting and costing to make sure everything's running smoothly on a day-to-day basis. In terms of obviously IT, you guys are probably aware technology is advancing all the time. So traditionally, our IT users, they manage their Network Rail digitally. So you're probably seeing signalers and signal boxes at railway stations. We're trying to move away from the signalers that use the old school method from about 30-40 years ago, using pull-up methods. So we're using more computer-based and digital methods to ensure our railway can be fit for the future. In terms of the strategy and planning scheme, you'll be working on projects in order to deliver a fit railway that can be used every day and ensure solutions are there for the future in terms of anything that can go wrong on the railway. And in terms of operations, so we have millions of commuters that use the railway each and every day in all corners of the country. This scheme pretty much is there to make sure the railway is there to function 24 hours a day without any hiccups, and ensure that the signalers, the station staff, everything's on board, just to make sure everything's safe and applicable. And the finance scheme, we've got Anthony here, so he can just run you through that briefly.
Hey everyone. Yes, so for those of you who are a bit late, I'm Anthony, a finance graduate, formerly a summer intern within finance. The finance scheme entails, firstly, getting the basics of accounting. You can join finance without having had an accounting background, but the scheme trains you up for that. But it's basically working alongside for other stakeholders, for example, the project managers or commercial, to make sure that we're sticking within our purse that the government have given us. As you'll all know, Network Rail is funded directly by the government. So there's a lot of rules and responsibilities that we have when managing public money. So we both look from that side, and as well as conducting forecasts to make sure that over the next few years, we can keep our railways safe and running.
Thank you, Anthony. We'll move on to the next section. So I've prepared a few questions that we can ask live and direct to Anthony, because he's been on the scheme, so he might give you a better understanding of what it's like to work at Network Rail. So we'll run through these questions in order. So Anthony, first question, what's the coolest projects you have worked on during your time on your placements?
So Cameron, there's lots of cool projects. It's hard for me to pick one, but one that I've really enjoyed doing was reviewing maintenance initiatives. So basically, Network Rail has two real options when trying to look after the railway. You can either replace the piece of track completely, we call it a renewal, or you can maintain an old piece of track to make it last little bit longer. So I was working in a maintenance reporting team. We looked after the finances of maintenance, making sure that we're spending the right money in the right places. And in our current funding settlement, there's an increased emphasis on maintenance. So I was basically looking at initiatives which were based on things that we'd seen changing. For example, Network Rail is very conscious of how climate change might affect our railway. For example, if it starts to rain more, the earthworks to the side of the track might become saturated, which in turn can cause landslides. So we're talking with climate teams to ensure that we're spending the right money in the right places. For example, Scotland might see more rain. So these initiatives, I was working on tracking them and ensuring that we are actually doing what we tell the ORR, which are our regulator, the Office for Road and Rail, to make sure we were telling them that we're getting everything spot on and our railway is going to keep being safe. If we have more time at the end, I can talk about some other projects.
Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. We'll move on to the next question. So what's one unexpected skill or insight you've gained during your placement that boosted your career?
So when I joined this placement within the maintenance team, I was given loads of documents. And for those of you who don't know, Network Rail split into 5 regions, and I'm going to go for 16 routes, although don't quote me on that. And each of these has their own way of doing things, because we're a devolved organisation. We give a lot of power to the routes and regions, but when we're reporting, we're doing it from central. So one skill that I really learned was patience, because I'd learn how one route would do their submissions, and then the next one would be completely different. And it's easy to be quite frustrated, because once you've learned, you think you have an understanding of how things are working, all of a sudden it all gets thrown in the air. So one thing that my placement manager, who was supporting me with this, told me was progression over perfection. I think there's always the temptation to think, if things aren't going well and you're not getting it completely finished, that you failed. But any progression you make, even if it's small, can still help tackle the low-hanging fruit, I suppose. So yeah, being resilient and not getting frustrated, I'd say, is the biggest skill that I've learned, which I hope will continue throughout my career.
Fantastic. Next question, Anthony. What's your top tip for current placement students to make the most of their experience and set up for their future success?
Yeah, whilst you're on placement, it could happen that there's loads of things going on and all of a sudden you want to dip your fingers in as many as you can. And I definitely recommend that. But you have to keep a log of what you're doing, because otherwise after 3 months, you'd have forgotten half of it. And I think this was something that I realized halfway through my placement. I couldn't remember. I knew I was doing a process. I knew how to do it. I was working with a Power BI, which is basically a business intelligence reporting function. And I figured it all out. But then if you don't understand why you're doing something, all of a sudden it becomes a bit meaningless. So my biggest tip would be focus on the why and the what, not necessarily the how, because you might only be there for 10 weeks, which was my case. I was a summer intern, and the how is never as important as the why and the what when you're trying to prepare for the rest of your career.
Perfect. Next question. How did your placement year help you build experience, and how has that contributed to your career growth?
I think there's a few different things. Firstly, some great contacts that I made during my placement year have helped me so much when I've come back. Just, I think, not being shy. It's easy because you're so new to the business. You obviously don't know anything compared to other people. So you can try and shy away from difficult conversations. For example, if I saw a finance director walking past in the corridor, just having a conversation with them about something you're doing, you'd think, oh, they don't really want to waste their time on that. But you'd be so surprised at Network Rail. People are so generous with their time. And I remember I walked up to someone during my internship because I'd heard them do a webinar or something similar. And I said, oh, can we have a quick chat about this? And they said, no, not really right now. I'm busy, but I'll put 20 minutes in your calendar and we can have a coffee together. And I think that's the sort of thing you can expect. People will be willing to make time for you during your placement year but on the other hand, you should be trying to take time from them because you've only got a small amount of time to spend, so make the most of it.
Fantastic. Next question, Anthony. Did you have an aha moment when you saw the potential for a lasting career with Network Rail?
I wouldn't say an aha moment, but for those of you who are late, I studied economics at the University of Warwick, and I wasn't necessarily sure that finance was for me. I just knew that I wanted a career in the railway. So as Cameron's last slide showed, there's lots of different opportunities within the railway. So I joined the finance internship. And whilst I was there, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to stay in finance for my whole career. But I knew straight away I wanted to be in the railway. So then I started looking at our exec board, and three of them all have finance backgrounds, but aren't necessarily in finance anymore. And the same goes for project managers, sponsors, engineers. Because Network Rail is such a broad organisation, you can have a whole career there doing so many different things. And I think the ability to go on secondment, we call it, where you can go to other organisations and dip in and out whilst broadening your experience of the whole rail industry as a whole, was that at that point I realised, I want a career at Network Rail because I'm not pinned down to what I've started with. The opportunities extend.
Next question, Anthony. What mentorship support did you receive, and how did that set you up for success?
This is a great question, and I'll pull it back more to my placement than my grad scheme, but then extend it further. So during my placement, straight away I was allocated a buddy who was a current graduate, and I'll come back to that. And straight away I was provided with a mentor. So when we built a really good relationship with these people. Then when I came back for the grad scheme, I'd had those old contacts from my buddy and my mentor, and there was this initiative. It was called DICE. It stands for the Digital Innovation for Collaboration in Engineering, and it's open to the whole organisation. But because I was a finance graduate, I thought, I don't really need to get involved in engineering. I'm not going to bother. But then my buddy, who from a summer internship, told me, "Are you doing DICE?" And I said, "No, of course not. It sounds quite silly." And he said, "It's one of the best opportunities you will have. Go and join it." So I joined DICE. I had a great year. I did a project regarding AI in engineering standards. Just as a side note, engineering standards are the rules that make up for safety on the railway. And from that, I got to speak to so many different people, make relationships with engineers, with project managers. And how that set me up for success is through that I met other people who have now also mentoring me. So because before I only had people in finance who I was just talking with, now I've got other contacts who can help me build careers outside of finance, which is great. And also they've allocated me non-finance projects, which I'm doing on the side for a bit of fun.
Amazing. And last question, Anthony, what's a career milestone you're super proud of?
So this is tough. I'm only 1 year into my career, but a couple of milestones which I'm proud of are, firstly, I'm now halfway through my accounting qualification. Network Rail offers so much support for this. Firstly, and I'm sure other companies offer similarly, but I was so surprised by my experience. So for each level, there's 4 levels of my qualification. I get to go to college for about 16 days, and the support is really good. But amongst that, I also get study days, which are paid for, where I don't have to work, can completely shut off and just focus on my studies. So getting through those 8 exams would be one milestone. Yeah, let's stick with that.
Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. We'll move on to our next section that we've prepared. So I know Anthony's basically touched on this briefly. I'll run you through a bit more detail, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask at the end. So at Network Rail, Anthony rightfully touched that it's key that you build your network. no matter what level you are, senior or just a beginner, everyone's there to help you in one way or another. So coaching and mentoring are two different services that we offer at Network Grow, and in order to help you develop yourself as an individual and also to progress your career. Both programs are generally formal agreements between you and your coach or a mentor, but each program, they work slightly differently. So as you can see in the slides, a coach will work in partnership with you across an agreed number of sessions in order to unlock your potential. It will also focus on your personal growth, and it will help you focus on self-reflection, and your coach will give you some time to challenge your thinking in terms of how you go about things in order to develop your self-awareness and understanding. In contrast, a mentor can take the approach of a role model in essence, and they'll focus more on sharing the skills and the knowledge and expertise with you through a series of one-to-one conversations, and they'll also get you to do certain projects and just to see how you cooperate. And then you can do a shared building exercise where you compare and contrast where you were and what you're doing now, just to see how the journey's been like for you. Some communities that we have at Network Grow. So as Anthony rightly mentioned, that you're never made to feel alone. So EDI is one big characteristic at Network Grow. So we look after our diversity, our inclusion, and our equity. And by 2029, we have a 5-year commitment to do even more than we're already doing. So as you can see on the slide deck, we have some community groups that might be applicable to yourself. There are certainly more that are not on slide. There's too many to mention, but we've picked out a few just to see, just to make you guys aware of what's available. So the first one we have there on the screen is Archway. So it exists to promote lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. So the LGBT community, they feel included at Network Grow. So it's nothing to deter you away from applying for the job. There's certain communities that make you feel welcome, and we're all an inclusive partner. And it's part of our wider EDI program to make sure everyone's feeling welcome, no matter who you are and what background you're from. We certainly welcome you at Network Grow. The Can Do community is an employee-run community that's for our colleagues that have disabilities. So I myself, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So when I initially applied at Network Grow, I had second thoughts about whether to disclose my disability as it's a non-visual one. But once I enrolled, I was encouraged to make my colleagues aware of the disability I had, just in case anything goes wrong. But they've been super supportive. They've always make sure I'm eating on time, whether I have regular breaks, whether I need anything to drink or anything. It's a super well-knit community, and they look after yourselves. In terms of culture fusion, we also have another society that brings together our Black, Asian, and ethnic minority groups. So no matter what race or background you come from, there's a place for you at Network Grow. And the last group that we've got on the slide deck as an Inspire focus group on creating fair gender and diversity at Network Grow. So an interesting stat I'd like to share with you guys. At the start of 2024, at the start of January, Network Grow had a target of achieving 26% of having females in our workforce. We've gone ahead and actually to this day we've exceeded the target. So at 30% at Network Grow today, we have 30% of women that are in leadership positions. At Network Grow, we also have another target that was set at the start of the year. So we have a 100% target of increasing employee numbers that are part of the LGBT plus community. Whether you are, whether you're not, just disclose it, just to make sure you feel welcome. So, because obviously I know some people do shy away from things, so it's nothing to be afraid of. We're here to support you guys. And in terms of that is it for the communities. What I'm going to do now is pass you over to Anthony, and he's going to run you through the application process.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm not so good at reading out from slides, so I'm going to let that be in the background, and I'm going to discuss some more application tips per se, rather than the process itself. So I think this is something that Cameron highlighted, and very important to Network Grow, is that safety underpins everything. when you apply to Network Rail, make it very clear that safety is always our number one priority. As you'll know, when fatalities happen very rarely on our network, but it's always something that we really get quite upset about as a company. So safety underpins all your choices. Secondly, Network Rail really wants to understand you. So when you're doing these interviews, bring your personality to it. And this might sound cliched, but I'll give you some examples of how Network Rail tries to tailor the whole scheme to you. So when you join, you get a service animal, which is basically your preferred way of communication. So, for example, I'm in theory a peacock, which means I'm more people focused, and I like to have more conversations. So what does this mean? Well, when you join, we want to know how we can best fit you. So if your line manager knows, okay, Anthony prefers this style of fashion, all of a sudden they'll tailor it to you, and you should bring this to your interview. The other thing that I always found really daunting when I was applying to jobs was, what does values mean? People always talk about values. How am I meant to bring that up? It just sounds like something that's off a list, and I'm sure many of you have felt this before. Well, Network Rail's vision, for example, is simpler, better, greener. And the way I try and get this into your answers, and this goes for other companies as well, is link it to the STAR. So the situation, task, action, response. So say a situation upon which you've had to deal with something, and then say how that links to the company's value of greener. Don't just say, oh, I think it's great that Network Rail is trying to be greener. Instead, go for something along the lines of, if I link it back to maintenance initiatives before, we're trying to reduce the amount of steel that we're using. When I was working at Network Rail, I looked into maintenance initiatives to ensure that we can make our asset last longer, and therefore this links to being a bit greener. Next up, for Network Rail, the way you communicate is really important. Almost all the roles are very much stakeholder focused. You need to be able to communicate with other stakeholders, because otherwise the network won't run overnight. It just won't run, because we can't get projects done if people aren't talking to each other. And then you might have blockades or instances where we've had to delay giving the railway back to the users because we're trying to do work which just won't get finished. I think the other thing I'd like to say is do your research. There's definitely no expectation that you'll know everything, but what's really important to Network Rail is that you take some sort of passion in the company, in my opinion. So I'm not personally like a train watcher, but I always found government and political money really interesting. Like how does our government choose where to spend its money? So when I was in the interview, I said, I'd love to learn more about the project appraisal approach. This links to my degree. And I don't know everything about it, never claimed to, but for sure by having that sort of niche area of focus, I was able to link a lot of my questions from the interview into that. I think with regards to the process itself, I said I wouldn't talk about it in too much detail, but I'll go over it a little bit. So like many companies, and Cameron, please correct me if this is not correct, we have video-based interviews. And in these video-based interviews, I think what's a good way to tackle them is just try and keep your head nice and still and stay as calm as you can and take your time when you talk. Of course, there's a timer, but if you're looking at the timer and getting a little bit panicked, it won't serve you best and you won't get your most authentic answer. So definitely take the 30 seconds you have to prepare your answer and have a little breath and then just deliver what you can the best, and don't worry otherwise. Then we do also have assessment centres. This year I was supporting in assessment centres, so I can give you some little tips in what these sorts of looked like. So our assessment centres this year were in person. For me, I was recruited during COVID, so they weren't. And it was really nice that we brought people along. They got a nice lunch, made to feel very calm and welcoming. And we had a combination, this is for finance specifically, but we had a combination of a one-on-one interview, a group task, as well as an individual task, just to sort of understand the way that you think. But most importantly, it was all about clarity of communication. If you get to the wrong answers, that's not normally as important as how you got to the wrong answers. For example, showing logical thought processes. But this will be different for every scheme, but just a small taste of what it's like in finance.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Anthony. Those are some great tips, and I'm sure you guys will appreciate that Anthony's been through the process and he's fresh out of it. So hopefully you guys have listened to him and taken on board what he said in terms of just getting through the process itself and what an amazing company it is to work for. Just a bit of backtail in terms of what Anthony said, just to make sure your application is top notch. It's always great to keep aware of what Network Royal are doing itself. So we have our social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we're on LinkedIn as well. So we're always updating in terms of what we do, not necessarily ourselves here, because me and Anthony are based at Milton Keynes, but the wider Network Royal. So there's always something going on different to each day. So it's always great to keep aware of what's going on. Anthony has mentioned his projects that he has worked on, so it'll be great in terms of your application, discussing what you've done previously and why you're interested in the role. In terms of generic questions, so sometimes you might get through to the assessment center or your application person, you might have a question. It's always best to base it around the company itself, not necessarily related to you. So a great example there is AI. So we can see the way the future is generating towards itself. It's becoming more digital and mobile, more robotic in that sense. So everything's more digitalized. So that'd be a great question to ask one of the interview panel. Research our culture. So I mentioned some previous groups that might be applicable to yourselves, you might be interested in joining. Certainly do your research in terms of the values and EDI perspective sort of side of things, and add that to your application and how does that apply to you. And as Anthony mentioned, highlight your skills. So in terms of we do want to know who you are, we want to know what you do, what you like, what your hobbies are, and just have a positive attitude towards things. And I'm sure great things are on the horizon for you guys. And that does conclude our presentation from myself and Anthony. I'll hand it back to Sharon now, just for any Q&A or anything you guys would like to ask us.
Great. Really interesting. And it sounds like a fantastic opportunity for a career move and a placement, a real taster of what can come. We got lots and lots of questions we can get through. And I'm just going to make us look a little bit bigger, but you've got the QR code. Do you want to tell them about the QR code then there?
The QR code, so that will direct you towards our early career site. So if you need any information that myself and Anthony might have missed out on the schemes or what you guys are looking for in terms of salaries, start dates and stuff, that will be all linked there. So if you register your interest, and as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we're going live next week. So if you go into that QR code and you're interested in applying to any of the schemes, do certainly register details and we'll be in touch towards the next fortnight or so, and we'll let you know when we're live. And if you need any help preparing the application, we're certainly there to help as well.
Great. Well, but like I said, we're going to go through, I've grouped the questions together that are of similar types. So if anybody out there watching thinks of anything that fits in, drop it in. We'll try to add them to the questions. We had a couple of questions from Liam. So I'm going to start in order of questions about the application process. And if you have answered them, it's always good to revisit them. And we did just had a good point from Clayton. He's I don't know if you see on the chat, he's watching this on his phone. So if you could put the actual link in the chat for him, that would probably help instead of the QR code, or as well as the QR code. But great. So they wanted to know, do you get lots of applicants? And do you, you did give some tips on the application process already. So there was quite a lot about on there. And like I said, this session is being recorded, so you can go back and watch. But do you get lots of applicants?
Yes. So in terms of my role itself, so I work on the attraction side of things. So my job is to get the applications through the door, and the wider recruitment team look after the application in terms of sieving them through the process. But in terms of applications, I can't give you a specific number, but certainly the schemes are quite popular, the engineering, the finance, the project management ones. and the IT ones. So the generic schemes that normally tend to stick out to people, that's the ones they apply for. And we do recruit in Scotland, Wales, and all of England. So there's plenty of opportunities up and down the country.
Brilliant. Do you have to do a group assessment centres or a one-to-one? And is there an video? You said, what is a video interview? I don't know if you mentioned the video that specifically.
Anthony, do you want to take that one?
I'm sorry, please can you repeat the question, Sharon?
Yep. Do you have to do a group assessment centre or a one-to-one? And what about a video interview?
Yeah, I can take that, Cameron. Although if you could do the video interview bit, that'd be a bit better, please. So for the finance scheme, which I was recently involved in the assessment centre for, it was broken up with both a group task. This was basically you had loads of facts and figures, and you needed to figure out and appraise which would be the best option. I think it was, for example, on where Network Rail should build a new depot. And you had to go, okay, well, if the train's going here, all of that sort of fun, logical stuff. Again, no right answer, but a bit of practice and just to see the way that you all communicate together. And then there's a one-on-one interview, and part of that could be up to the discretion of each scheme. So the project management scheme might like to tailor their one-on-one interview in a different way to the finance scheme. Ours involved a little bit of presentation, for example. And then there was also an individual task, which I won't go into details on.
And you were going to, Karen, answer about the video.
So the video interview, as Anthony mentioned previously in his experience, we traditionally done those just in COVID. So now it's more of an in-person interview, whether that's an individual basis doing a presentation or a group exercise. The only video interview you'll have is before the assessment center, which Anthony touched on. So it'll be sent an online questionnaire, and you'll have 30 seconds to prepare your answer, and then 2 minutes to actually answer your question. And then if you're successful in that stage, we'll invite you to the assessment center.
Great. And it kind of leads on nicely to the next question where Clayton asked, do you use real people to review the applications, or do you use AI?
We use real people. So we have a partner organization called AmberTrack. So they look after all our live vacancies, and they manage our recruitment process for us. So with the real people involved.
That's good news. Peter wants to know that did being accepted to the grad, I think he might have phrased this wrong, is being accepted on the grad scheme depend on what grade you're getting at uni? And if so, what are the requirements?
Yes, correct. So I've popped in the chat the early careers website. That's our micro website. So each scheme you're looking to apply to will have the requirements on there. So traditionally, the engineering schemes, they require an accredited degree that was part of the engineering process. But otherwise, traditionally, we look at 2-2s for other schemes, more or less.
Lee wants to know what kind of projects he could be working on, or she.
What scheme is that for? Is that for any scheme in general?
I think they put it through. They might be talking about, since Anthony was speaking about finance, but it might be part of this.
I can try and answer for a different scheme, like putting a different hat on. So so I've recently joined a big infrastructure project called the Transpennine Route Upgrade, which is looking at upgrading the line which goes between Manchester and York. And as part of my induction, I got a nice little re-induction because why not joining a new team, find out a little bit more. I was able to spend some time with a project manager, a commercial apprentice, and a project planning apprentice. And the sort of projects that they were working on was, for example, ordering steel or sorting out a contract for steel with the steelworks, or another one was trying to organize with talking to National Highways about what the impact of closing down a certain area of track would be, and that was for the project planner. these are the sorts of projects like at a high level that you can get involved in. But something more specific for me was, as I mentioned earlier, I got to play around during my actual intern placement. I got to play around and have training on Power BI. And this was not just to get good at it, but to make some impact on the organization. There had recently been a change in governance rules, which meant that certain number of executives had to be sitting within a panel for the validation process to be correct for the people to get the money in the finance world. So my job was to automate the process of checking that there had been the correct amount of people on the panel, because all of a sudden, if they go around saying, oh, but we've got the money, but we've just had a look and it turns out we didn't have the right amount of people on the panel, we could get into trouble. So building to that was linking reading skills, because I had to read the new regulations, tech skills with the BI dashboard, and also people skills. So that's one project.
That's really interesting. I love all this stuff. Liam wants to know, are the placements mostly shadowing, or do you get to do your own workload?
I think I've explained that a little bit there, but I can give another example. So there was a summer intern at the organisation, we'll go with the summer intern who was at the organisation this year, and he was involved in property finance. So the way that property finance works at Network Rail is that we have both profit from people coming from the stations, as well as from people spending in the stations, rental agreements, as well as a few other things. So rather than shadowing, it was a 10-week project. For the first 4 weeks, he got to learn about it, and then for the next 6 weeks, he was involved in the reporting for property. So what he was doing got sent straight to the property finance director. So it's not just shadowing, but when you're there for 10 weeks, I wouldn't worry necessarily about what you're doing. It's more understanding why you're doing it and what the role you had in the function was, rather than how you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We did have let me find it again. Little bit interesting question. After the scheme, what salary can you expect to earn in, say, 5 years? And of course, it's going to be different with different roles. And I think they have to understand they're not necessarily going straight into being hired, are they? They've got to go back to university and apply for a job. So it depends how they do, doesn't it?
Yeah, correct. So in terms of obviously the internships, I did mention there were 17 grand prorated. And then obviously if you are successful, you do go back to university, finish your studies, and then depending on how you did on the scheme in the internships, you do get an offer back. So Anthony was successful in that sense, and he was invited back on Network Rail. Then you're fast-tracked on to the graduate scheme. The salary, give or take roughly, is just around the 30 grand mark for the graduate scheme. And then once you complete that is when you begin to see the money changing in terms of the structure of the organization.
Just Great. To follow that up, Cameron, not to give specific numbers, but it could link to a question about progression. There's many graduates within Network Rail, many executives that came from graduates. If I didn't believe that there was a scope to keep getting senior and keep learning and keep expanding, probably wouldn't have chosen to work at Network Rail. But there's definitely an opportunity and the ability to keep moving up, but only if you put the hard work in. That's a given. So I wouldn't say I necessarily like the question, how much can you expect to have in 5 years? You can't expect to have anything. You have to work for it.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fair way to answer that question for sure. We've got through most of our questions. I suppose there's one that I was like, but I'll ask it anyway. We had an anonymous question of, are you doing anything with drones?
I can answer that question. I'm a bit of a nerd for this stuff, so this would be more for engineers. But we do stuff with drones. I don't know if maybe they saw a little snippet in the video. So in the past, Network Rail is with the second biggest landowner in the world. So a few different roles and responsibilities for drones. Firstly, we do a lot of track patrolling, just people walking up and down the track, And obviously I said safety is the most important thing for us. Well, track patrolling is not necessarily very safe, and it's not necessarily the most effective. So we have a role for drones to scan and check at a high level, is anything broken straight away. But there's more nuanced roles for drones as well, which is a bit more engineering focused. For example, there's a lot of former mines in the Yorkshire area, just quite specifically, and this can lead to sinkholes. So rather than getting people to go in and have a look, instead we can send a drone inside. And the same goes for bridges. Bridges inspections are done increasingly by drones. I think there's a few others as well, but there's a lot for drone technology, but there's also a lot in AI technology to scan the tracks. We get to do so many site visits. Sorry, I'm getting excited.
That's great.
I got to go on this train. It's called the New Measurement Train, which is basically this big yellow train, which has so many different tools on it to track the smoothness of rail, more things I can't remember. And these are the sort of things you can do as an intern. In my 10 weeks, I got to do a site visit of King's Cross Station and go up a tower. It's not just about the office with Network Rail. There's a real culture for you to go and understand, go and get your boots on the ground. And yeah, good question. Do you have drones?
That is it's a great answer too. You've got me very excited about it. And I was wondering myself, I'm glad you said something about are different jobs just office based, and quite clearly not, depending what you're doing. You're getting out there and being part of things, which I think is super exciting. We're down to the last couple of minutes of this presentation and session. I found it super interesting. I hope everybody out there did as well. If you quickly scan through the chat, Network Rail have put in their early careers network directly, and you can see the QR code as well if you're not on your phone and you're on a laptop. I've also put in the top of the chat the link to the YouTube for CareerMap TV. So as I said earlier, this session is being recorded, so you can go back and watch it. We'll probably get it up in the next couple of days, watch again and share it. So all those links and all this information will be there again. I'd like to say thank you very much to our guests, Anthony and Cameron from Network Rail. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank
you, Sharon.
Then we're going to say goodbye from us and goodbye to everybody in the audience. So have a good afternoon. Thank you. Goodbye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.